My name is Shantanu Verma, and I'm a partner with the consumer goods and retail practice at Rolenberger. I am joined today by Nader Tavassoli, Professor of Marketing and Academic Director of the Leadership Institute at the London Business School. I'm also joined by my co-host, Vinita Bakshi, who will be conducting the interview with me. I guess right off the outset, Nader, what are brands and how are they differentiated?
Technically speaking, brands are intangible assets, and they have two basic components, an identity and an image. The brand identity can be trademarked. It would include the brand name, the logo, and also other identifying brand assets. Think Tiffany's Robin's Egg Blue Box. Brands are distinctive when their identity is highly recognizable and recallable at moments that matter. Think about brand awareness that clearly drives consideration, and familiarity alone can affect choice. So think about Dior and Gucci. We can think of them as both being of high quality, but they're also very different. Dior is renowned for its classic femininity and Gucci for its fashion-forward androgyny. And as I said here, it's a matter of taste, which brand you might prefer.
We've now talked a little bit about, brands and brand differentiation. This is the right and perfect transition into what are the returns for companies to invest in brand strength?
What's well understood is that strong brands create top-line returns. Think volumes and margins. As I said before, a distinctive brand can drive choice, especially in low involvement or credence goods categories. Brands also create pricing power. There we're really talking about the brand image. Most consumers, for example, they couldn't tell apart a Bud Light and a Coors Light in a blind taste test. Yet they might still have fairly strong preferences for one over the other, and they wouldn't switch between them even when offered a discount. Pricing power also extends to your collaborations. A classic example some of you might recall is when Intel Inside was so powerful that to have an Intel Inside sticker on the computer, the manufacturers had to pay a premium. And of course, strong brands also provide strategic opportunity. Think about brand extensions. That's a common example where when Coke launched Coke Light, all that goodwill and the brand awareness spilled over onto the extension. They didn't have to start from scratch. What's less obvious, at least to many of my clients, are the bottom line savings. Again, now we're applying bargaining power to the entire value chain. Think of a mall. They might actually offer favorable terms to anchor clients, such as an Apple store. Or conversely, think about Red Bull. They tend to receive better terms of trade and higher support from the retailers than lesser brands might. And we can continue. Thanks to greater customer loyalty and price resilience, strong brands also tend to have lower earnings volatility. What does that mean? They tend to have a lower cost of capital. And the implications of this are far-reaching. Finally, consider the war for talent. Simply put, consumer awareness and trust extend to job seekers' decision-making. And brands, like they do if I'm wearing a famous brand, also provide social currency and resume power for their employees. What do I mean by this? Your friends, your family, and future employers will all be influenced by the brand that you work for. And my work has shown that this translates into a substitute for pay, even for CEOs. So strong brands don't have to basically bribe their employees to work for them. Now, firms who ignore the full spectrum of brand returns, both the top line and the bottom line benefits, they tend to not leverage the brand with intent across the entire value chain, and they certainly won't be making the right investment decisions.
In your research, you coined a term and a concept called brand-led change. Could you maybe elaborate on that and just talk about what that means?
It's a complicated term, maybe, but it's actually a simple concept. It's the engine, so to speak, of a process I call, aligning your business, brand, and behavior, the 3 Bs. On the one hand, your business, think of your leadership, your structures, operations, and processes. they need to be aligned to support the delivery of the brand promise. So they stand behind the brand. On the other hand, inside the business, your brand should be leveraged to inspire and guide on brand behaviors across the entire customer journey. If you take this brand-led change idea, I always say, even thinking outside the box starts with a box. And in that sense, the brand should be the box that inspires differentiated behaviors across the entire business. That would be brand-led change at its creative best.
Given the current macro environment, how can effective branding help companies stay resilient during uncertain times?
Times of uncertainty are actually those where brand investments pay higher dividends, both with customers and with employees. Strong brands tend to have an unfair advantage in times of uncertainty. On the one hand, there tends to be a flight to safety, right? Your expenditure is going to be more precious, and you tend to invest or purchase more trusted brands. And at the same time, if you're a trusted brand, you face lower pricing pressures, at least when the C-suite is paying attention to it. Which means in the times of crisis, a lot of companies will cut back on their marketing spending, which includes the branding spend. But actually, it's those times when whatever you spend is going to go further because you achieve a higher share of voice. And the second dynamic I mentioned was internally with your own employees. In times of uncertainty, it's not just the customer who's affected, but your own people are. They might be uncertain about the future. They might be anxious. And what that leads to, they tend to be more motivated by their own needs than that of the customer. But the brand really puts the customer into focus. And people are motivated by helping others. The brand purpose for a brand like Patagonia is the planet. For Dove, it might be women's self-esteem. And for the insurance broker Aon, it's enabling their clients to progress by de-risking their business, which is especially important in times of crisis. So in that sense, an authentic brand promise, by bringing the customer into the view, helps motivate your people, especially during difficult times.
And then as you think about this, what are some of the biggest challenges companies face when they're trying to evolve their brand from a starting point to a different point?
The need to evolve a brand is often not obvious, especially when things are going quite well. And there tend to be two common dynamics that should give brands pause. In the first case, the dynamics of conducting a business might actually sort of push the brand in the wrong direction. Think about your best customers, your most loyal customers. Naturally, you're going to be aware of their needs, their desires, their complaints. This can become a problem because you're going to literally start aging with today's best customers. And you're going to leave behind tomorrow's best customers who might not identify with you as much. The second dynamic is actually kind of the opposite, where the brands become stuck in time. So there's many, many big trends. I'm not talking about sort of the trend of the moment. I'm talking about big societal changes. And strong brands, on the one hand, are anchored in deep human truths and in an authentic heritage. However, their DNA needs to be continually be reinterpreted as the times change.
What trends in branding do you think will be most impactful over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I'm not a futurist, but AI is the talk of the town. There's trends like AI. Before AI, there were disruptors like data analytics, digitalization, omni-channel marketing, you name it. What all those disruptions did for the job of a marketer who tends to be responsible for the brand, it continually expanded their scope of responsibility. Today's effective CEO, they need to not just be fluent in finance or coordinate their actions with the sales department, but they also need to be able to talk to the CTO and to collaborate with them effectively. Or, distribution, for example, when it comes to, or the supply chain when it comes to sustainability. And this is a positive trend. I think the most impactful change will actually be if you take that one step further. When you think of branding to evolve spanning the entire organization and not reside only in the communications silo. This will require that brand responsibility is cross-functional. You need a cross-functional steering group. You need a cross-functional scorecard. You need cross-functional planning and orchestration. The greatest branding impact may well come from a structural change rather than from AI, big data, blockchain, or whatever technology comes next.